Anyway, so first of all, we'll start with a little bit about the tools in general, how they resemble each other and how they can work together, and then go through some editing practices and eventually exercises on hands-on things and different approaches of how you can use stairs in different situations. At least that was the plan. The reason I have the iPad here is to follow the exercises in the exam same order that you can follow up later on with the video recordings and with the handout as well. So let's start with the stair and railing tools. These are assembly elements, and who here knows what are assembly elements we have in Archicad? I think there's only one, and now maybe two. Curtain walls. Yes, that's the other one. That's where this system originates from. Now I could say that beams and columns since 23 are close to being assembly elements because you have different segments and you can add certain elements to them. But what it's all about and why it's most interesting, for example, for stairs, because every stair has a structure and every stair has a finish. Of course, you don't have to have these structures, so you can turn them on and off on request. But that's the general idea, and that's how they are built up. And there are a number of settings that you can have, and I'm sure that first of all, when you saw this dialogue, when 21 came out, it was like, what's happening? And I understand. So it was basically designed, I'm sure most of you have already seen Martha, right? When she was over and like a few months ago. Martha, our product manager, who was the designer and manager and like the product owner of the stair and railing tools. And what she did, usually how this process goes, they gather all the information from the market and try to create a tool which fits all of them. And that's either oversimplifying something or overcomplicating and overspecifying something. Since stairs are the ones that vary by country the most, it needs to be the most flexible, and that's why the only basic solution is to have all of the settings available that can be highly customizable, but then you have to only do it hopefully once or twice, and then you can use them in your practice. So the previous stair maker was oversimplified and a little bit bumpy to use. The new stair tool is very extensive and specifiable up to a very extensive level, but at the same time you can use it in basically most of the projects that you have to. So that's the stair tool itself, and the railing tool works very similarly to the stair itself. We have a railing, and then in that the different sub-elements are listed in different topics, and these are going to be the things that we'll walk through and we'll learn how to use them. The importance and let's say the connection between the two tools is that stairs are like the base element on which we place railings in general, so that's why stairs are usually only associative to a story, so they can be linked to a story and they can stretch between two stories, and railings themselves can be associated, and not only their segments, but their nodes can be associated too. We'll see what that means a little bit later. So how do these tools work together? First of all, the very important requirement that we had to fulfill in case of stairs and railings was having the same kind of detail level on 2D as in 3D as well, and have the same kind of editability and flexibility on both views. And to solve that, basically that's what you have. Stairs have all of the sub-elements listed already, and once you go into edit mode, those are where you can actually enter and select each of the sub-elements individually. And that's what I'll try to explain to you right now. So what are, for example, the stairs structure settings and the available structure settings? So if you select the stair itself and go into the settings dialog, the first that you always see is the structure. And then you have a number of options to choose the flight structure, and you have a number of options to choose the landing. I'm sure that you have already been there while actually playing around with the tool. The other thing that you can choose individually is the different settings for both the structure and the landing elements, and also for the finish, the tread, and the riser elements. Now, how can I turn off these elements individually? You just go here, turn off either the finish or turn off either the structure, and then basically we have an invisible element. In certain occasions, when, for example, we're talking about exporting stairs to IFC or for different disciplines, that's when that's when we have to think a little bit further behind the tool, because because how the stair is calculated, you have a reference line that heads up, and that I can show you like this. So basically, a stair is fit under its reference line, which is stepping up, one step by step, and it's calculated that the finish and the structure itself is also placed under this reference line. If I go into the stair settings and I turn off the finish itself, then the structure fits that reference line, because the base of how a stair is calculated is the regulations, and it are the numbers that are necessary to fit, rather than having the reference line on top of the monolithical structure and then putting each of the finishes on top of that as additional layers. So what I think that you might have seen during your OpenBIM workflows is that when you're trying to export a structure model where you have the stair, but you don't really want to export the finishes, you have an issue. Why? Because since stairs are hierarchical assembly elements, you cannot, unfortunately, turn off the finish in a model view option, or partial structural display doesn't really take effect on a stair. Martha herself thought that this issue could be addressed by creating two stairs on top of each other to create one structural stair, and then on top of that, a finished stair. But in my personal opinion, and sometimes as we do this, it's a little bit easier to handle it with a different approach. And let me just start on with that, because that's going to be a good example for you guys. So let me just turn back on the finish itself. And what would happen here is that if I go into the edit mode and select the different elements differently, so I'm selecting the structure now, and I go into the structure settings, and of course this has also classification and properties. Now, as you see, it's unclassified, but what I can do is by 22, and if I had the 23 classification, I could classify this as a stair structure, which is it now. But if I select the finish, which you see here, sorry, one sec. So if I select the finish, that also can have a separate classification, so that I can, for example, not classify as a stair tread, but rather classify it as a building element proxy, like a morph, okay? So once this tread is reclassified as a building element proxy, then in the translator settings, whenever you're exporting, for example, for a structural practice, then, as you know, in the geometry export settings, and let's just go through quickly the general export, under the model filter, what you can do is to filter out building element proxies as an IFC entity that you do not send out to the basically the IFC model. That way, you still have your finish and your structure within the Archicad model itself, but at the same time, it does not participate in the actual export process, so you can filter out those elements quite easily. That is the approach that I would have when we're exporting as a structure model, for example, for our practices. Anyway, I went too into depth before actually introducing the tool itself, but I just thought that probably you guys all know the stair tool well enough to not to go through the dialogues, but these are the things that most are important. What else I would draw your attention to is the stair rules and standard settings within the actual interface. And there is another thing that comes to this: what is actually displayed under the rules and standards, and what can we edit over there, and where can we actually control, and that's especially an interesting fact for the BIM managers, where can we control what's seen in this dialog? Under project preferences, that's where you actually have, let's say, a menu for the stair rules and standards, where you can make it visible, check or uncheck if stair editing rule or standard is visible within the dialog itself. I think in the 21 template, 21 default template, for example, the stair pitch wasn't even an option. So you didn't have that visually in the rules and standards. And sometimes users didn't really find that it's actually possible to set or actually define a stair by its pitch, because this really wasn't visible in the dialog. The only thing that you have to do, and I think in 22 and 23 this is turned on by default, is to go over to options, project preferences, and under stair rules and standards, you have access to this dialog and you can set everything that you want. So this is just another additional comment. What's also sometimes not necessarily clear is first of all, what do turning types mean, and what do segment types mean, and what are the differences between the two? So I'll try to explain this to you now. So the stair turning type options are, first of all, automatic landing, winder with equal angles, and winder with equal goings. And these stairs are and this is settable, by default in the stair settings. So whenever you're in the stair settings over there, this is basically what this means. So now for this particular one, I have selected the winder with equal goings, but this could be equal angles or landing as well. Now I have a question for you. Why do you think these stairs are now purple instead of having the proper outlines? And it's not graphical overrides or using a different pen set. Sorry? Yes, correct. And I'm actually happy that I have left this issue in the file itself, because now we have to solve this one. Because this is what you would necessarily see if you have already placed the stair, but then eventually changed the story height that the stair wants to follow if it's a bottom and a top linked stair, which is running between different stories. Now, what would happen here, and why does it highlight it with purple, and what's the issue? Basically, with the current rules that the stair follows, it's not capable, current rules in the current settings, it's not capable of actually going from one story to the other. So it's not capable of going between the ground floor and the first floor. And I'm not sure I'm using the right word here, but actually it's not, so it cannot calculate itself correctly. So every time when it's highlighted with purple, you need to know that you need to address something over there, because it's not actually following the same kind of settings that you have set for it originally. So the way I'm going to solve this now is actually just adjusting that little setting that I had at the beginning, so that now it's actually running between the two stories and it touches both, so I have everything set correctly. And I'm going to set these as well, just in case, so that everything is fine. Okay. And you saw how it actually the stair recalculated a little bit, and it actually changed its form. That is because now it's actually doing what it's supposed to be. A little bit more interesting thing is the stair segment type options and how you can play around with those. I will try to do this with the help of a basic stair type. So how do you normally edit the stair? If I, for example, want to have a landing in the middle, and I don't want the 3 steps to happen on this segment type. So I just start to draw my stair. And I'm going to use, first of all, I'm going to use one of the favorites, and please join me over here, this segment type's favorite, okay? So we'll choose this one, and that's what's going to be the demonstration with. So 1 click, 2 clicks, and 3 clicks. That wasn't really hard, but what I actually want to avoid is having those 2 steps in the middle. How can I do that? The way that is possible is that actually within a stairs editing, you can switch between the segment types which appear in the little pet palette. So once I have reached one point where I know I want to have a flight stair, I can just switch, turn to the landing, edit the landing at the end, switch back to the flight segment type, and finish it up where it should be. Okay, so this is the first thing that sometimes we forget, that you can actually change between segment types during the editing. Now, the second example that I would use is the same, but with a different turning type. So I'm heading up here with the flight landing, with the flight until this point. Then I'm choosing the winder with equal angles menu point. I'm heading forwards here, switching back to the flight. And it didn't do anything. Why? Because it cannot calculate itself with the current rules. So basically what I would be doing is to go over here, select the winder with equal angles turning type, and start to draw my stair like this. And once, hopefully it will let me to do it, it still doesn't do anything. And that is specifically a case when we need to add extra nodes to the stair how we're editing it. And this is where the stair tool becomes less intuitive than it's supposed to be. So how can I actually add there that turning type that I struggled to do so? I can click over here, finish my stair at the, let's say, 8th step, or let's say finish it at the 9th, switch to the segment type, place it up until there, try to follow the turning point, and still it's not really doing what I want to. So I have to come here and then switch the turning type and press over there and over there and then back here. And once I eventually can realize that I was able to edit my stair, but this is really not the way that we recommend to do it. We need some planning to do. And that will be addressed in a later example that I'm going to show you of how to actually plan how you can edit the stair so that it actually follows the settings that you're planning to do. But let's move on to the third turning type. That will be the winder with equal goings. Now I'm going to switch to that option, so the winder with equal goings, still using this stair favorite. And I'll try to edit my stair here. And this is when typically you see this white go stair appearing. What happened there? You are aware that the stair solver comes up from time to time, and what does the stair solver actually do? Now it gives you a number of options of how, with the current settings, how you can place the stair as it is. And I also think that it's not necessarily always that you actually click on the little button and try to place the stair as it is. But once you hover above one of the solutions, it actually gives you, or it should give me, a hint. It usually pops up a little window, and it gives you a hint of what type of settings you need to make. Now I don't really know why it's not popping up, unfortunately. But eventually, for you guys, it might do. I don't know if you're trying and you're trying the same with me. But in the stair solver, usually it might be because of the HDMI, I'm not sure. But usually when you have the stair solver popping up, you can have a little, let's say, pop-up window appearing of what that solver setting is actually using. So what kind of turning type it's switching. So then it will tell you that the middle segment type is switching back to the winders with equal going. So that's how it can actually calculate it. So you don't only necessarily have to click on this, but you can actually use those settings by yourself. So in here, how I would be able to select it, I would use the flight up until that point, switch to that segment type, click over there, switch back to the flight, and that's how I could calculate my stair. So this is the hint that the solver gives me once it's working correctly. But you don't necessarily have to always use the solver and just go with that setting, because it actually gives you hints of how that stair could be calculated by default, so you don't need to actually bring up the solver at all. And what I wanted to show you in the previous example as well, remember when I added these extra nodes? This is recommended to do this way. So on the next view, you will see some examples of how these type of stairs and how especially these with winder stairs can be calculated. And once you click on each of these stairs, you will see how they would be modeled by recommendation once you want to solve these. So I have one where I want a fixed landing in in this area, then of course the only thing that you have to do is to place extra nodes over there so that the landing can calculate itself within the boundaries of those nodes. If you have a very strict option to create your winder stairs and you need to have this exact same form and use all of those settings, then the only thing that you need to do is to put a node over there, use a flight landing here, use a winder with equal angles on this segment, a winder with equal angles over there, and again, and finish up with a flight. Can I actually change these segment types? What do you think? Or the turning types themselves? Yes, I can always change it on the fly as well. So I can switch on that segment type, and I can actually access from the pet palette. So see, whenever you see this little icon appearing, you can actually switch between the segment types after the editing process. And sometimes that could result in, again, bringing up the solver and giving you a different approach. But if you use the right rule settings, and within those rules it's possible, you can change between winder with equal goings, landing, flight, etc. within the stair itself after editing. And this also goes not just for the segment types, segments for the individual baseline parts. It also goes for the turning types. So you can also click on the node on the border, and it would give you, the pet palette would give you the same little option, the turning type options. So you can click on that, and then it would give you the exact same dialog as you would have in the normal stair settings. These, because whenever you click on this and have that little setting, turning type options, this is the little dialog that pops up once you click on one of the nodes. So afterwards, even after placing and even during placing, you can change all of these settings by node and not necessarily in an overall stair setting. That's the importance. So over here, let's say I'm turning this into winder with equal runs, and then I click there. I select the new turning type, and I'm switching. I'm trying to edit different settings. So for example, I'll have a fixed number of goings for sure, and I'll make this 4, or I'll make this 3. Then it's going to be a little bit different approach. Let's make this 3. See? And then based on the settings that I have made, obviously because I only have now 3 steps over there and not just 6, I have a much longer stair, which then I can adjust so that I make it work that way. Not edit mode, sorry. Well, we can actually go into edit mode later. Once I do this, yeah, let's say recalculate or rescale, these are the things that I can basically do. All right. Any questions now for segment types or turning types? Because this is the question often asked. Yes?
That little example, you know how you put the stairs and
Mm-hmm.
how would you move the lines to before them? So they're coming up.
These ones, so they're perfectly on the corner. That's what you mean. So I think then I only can, but the only thing that I could do is to select this turning type and just edit that there should be at least 4 here. And then once, based on that, it can pretty much similarly calculate to have it exactly in the corner. But in order to play around with it, it's usually some of these settings as they are. So for example, let's have a winder with equal angles, and then apply changes to click turning entire stair. Let's try out that. Not really. Yeah, that is a tricky one, but usually it's within the segment settings themselves of how you can do that. So once a winder with equal angles is fixed, then it's in the actual turning type option settings of how you can do it. And fixed number of goings, maximum number of goings, optimum number of goings. You have a number of settings. To have it exactly on the corner, that depends on the stair itself, I think. And I know what you're asking, because in the UK, because these stairs, winder stairs are not really a thing in Hungary. So unfortunately, in school, we didn't really learn about how to calculate this. The first time I was exposed to how extensive these questions can be was in the UK, where you actually use winder stairs and not even just those kind of winder stairs, which are, you know, properly wide and calculated, but in the mini UK houses, you have the mini tight little stairs, which have to have an exact same route and exact same kind of distribution. And then, well, I spend hours on fixing those stairs sometimes. And I actually have an example back here of one of the cases which I had over there of how we could actually solve the stair that they wanted to create. So
So the answer to getting it hitting right on the corner is getting your 45 angle, so that the return must be equal.
mhm.
So the distance between the two flights needs to be the same. But the problem we often get is when you do these tight angles, the stringer
Mhm.
goes crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we struggle to control in that scenario.
Stringer stairs are, again, yeah, one of those things. I think between 21 and 23, it did evolve in just only one sense. Wherever it went super crazy and like twisted, and then you actually don't generate those stringers. That's how it was solved. So it's not there. It's not doing that twisty look, but it's actually not there. So stringer stairs are one of those which I absolutely agree with, but in some of the cases it's just almost impossible to make it work. But we'll try to make it work later. So in one of the examples, that's what we're after, to make that stringer be able to work.
I needed this day corner,
Mhm.
and we needed that we moved the bounces.
That is what I'm using in the next. Yes, that is what I'm using. Let's just move quickly forward to the MVOs just to get through that part, okay? Unless there are any other questions now for this or technical support issues that I can report back to Martha.
Is there any benefit to having a reference line on the inside or the outside?
In some of the cases, yes. For example, when you are trying to achieve that situation, when all of these meet at the same point, then I think yes. And I think it's just an editing preference, to be honest. So if it's not a stairwell here, but a wall, it has to touch the wall first. So you use the inner edge to edit the stair, and then, as Barbara said, to fix the edges, you just edit the boundaries on the outside. So it's depending on what you use as an editing aid. If it is the outside surface or the inside, I don't honestly see a big difference in between how they are calculated. All right. MVO settings. Same for railings and for stairs as well. Both of them can have different kinds of setups, different kinds of filtered out views by saved MVO. Just so that you know, we have a stair options and railing options within the MVO settings. You have a number of settings that you can have, not only for 3D, but for 2D as well. So what the stair symbol has in that particular view, and what it looks like in 3D. The simplified is sometimes very good when you're actually working with the file, and the only thing that you need is just the top surface of the steps. It's really a personal preference of how they should be done. What's a little bit more interesting is where do these actually take place, and where can I override these settings themselves. So probably you have also tried to edit the floor plan display of the stairs within the actual stair dialog, because you can override the model view options by turning this off, and then you can have a number of different settings within the stair itself. But what often is also forgotten, that if you go into the edit mode of, for example, a stair, so like this one or that one, let's go into the edit mode of that one. It's not only the stair geometry that you can edit in an edit mode, but it's also the symbol. So once I have the symbol selected here, I can individually select basically the grid, change it to a different grid type, I can select the walking line, and especially that comes in hand when, for example, there is a stair which you can only edit by editing the boundaries, editing the reference line a little bit, having a few custom steps. Then you can actually take a hold of even the walking line and just drift it a little bit so that it matches the floor plan display that you want. What's a little bit even more interesting, and this comes in hand for those who use stairs in hotlink modules and in federated models with different kinds of buildings. And we often got the question of how can I solve it? Because in the old stair maker, you could almost like edit the break mark where it should be by element. And you always could edit that by view. So that's how you solved placing stairs on, let's say, split-story floor plans in the same model. Now, how can you do this here? You can actually have access to the break mark within the stair symbol. So the two things that you can do, you can take a hold and switch the break mark right in this view, or you can just move it across to place it wherever you want it to be, as it is. So that is, but I wouldn't even say that's a workaround. That's a deliberate editing option for those cases when you have to solve a federated view or something like that. That's just be aware that that is possible. And then, of course, it stays like that. So by editing the different kinds of model view options, you can fulfill the construction phase, for example, the building permit or the conceptual design drawings as well. But let's not forget that we have a reflected ceiling plan also for the stair and also for the railings, as it is. Okay. A difficult topic is what do we do with spiral stairs and how do we work with those? Now, one of the options that I have is, first of all, to use the magic wand, because the magic wand works quite well with the stair tool. So once you have planned actually, let's say, a walking line, or you have planned the outlines of a stair, you can just use the magic wand and edit it that way, and it will actually give you a number of options of how you can create it. The other way that you can do, for example, in case of these kind of spiral stairs, is to take a hold of this one. Let's just modify it a little bit so it's just 1,000 wide. And I'll go here. And this is why I have drawn the outlines before actually editing them, so that I can place that node over there, switch to the winder with equal goings option, create the stair so that it actually follows the round, switch back to the flight, and it's actually finished because the rules itself lets me to do that. But if I start, let's say over here, so start with editing the landing, put it here, do the winders in equal goings, have this editing mode, so the curved, put it there, finish, switch back to the editing mode and finish up the stair like that. So this would be a little bit difficult without using the different kinds of segment and turning types. This is the way that you can solve such a situation where you have a curved element, or that curve could be, like an absolutely alternative polygonal view. So it depends on the actual situation of how you can solve them. How do I create a spiral stair? That's also a very good question. What I can do is to use the same thing, to use the winder with equal goings and use this settings over there. So I edit and just make sure to create my stair like this. So this is the spiral stair that I can make. Oh, sorry. Let's just click again. Use that turning type, click there, over there. Yes. So this is what I have, and just as a post-editing thing, you can also add turning points and different segment types and different turning options to the stair after actually you have placed them. You cannot only, select one of the segments and modify that and just select one of the nodes that you have already placed and modify that. But you can actually add new points, so new nodes. So I could add, oh wait, that's not supposed to be happening. So I can actually, if I'm if I'm good, I can actually add an extra point over there, and then I can say that over here in this node, I should have a landing that I want to, let's say model unit, minimum riser offset, fixed riser offset, okay. And then I add another node over there, yes. And then I change this segment type to be a landing. And that's how you can add a landing after you have actually placed a stair, by adding a few extra nodes and changing that little segment type to a different stair segment type. This is also something, if I want to finish up maybe this stair and this, because I have a landing, I have access to making it a little bit different. And this is also a tip and trick, so that right after you have started to edit your stair, you can make it actually work by just post-editing all of these nodes in between. There's another option that we need to discuss, the difference between the boundary and the reference line. And Barbara, you have already answered this question, and you have already seen what this all does, but just for the sake of it, let's just go through it together. So the boundary and the reference line difference is going to be pretty straightforward once we see this example. So I'm using the reference line now on the left-hand side, and I want to fill out this space with a stair, but with different approaches. I am going to use now the reference line on the right-hand side, and I am trying to follow the wall line over here on this wall. Now, how can I solve this situation? How can I fill that space with the stair? Of course, with the stair boundaries, because that is very different from the baseline. Whenever you click on the stair itself, the big blue line is the baseline / reference line that we're quite used to when we're using the wall tool or any other tool in Archicad. If you again click on the other edge, or click on the boundaries of the stair, then a green line appears, of course, because that is the boundary of the stair, which then you can freely edit as you want. So I can just go here and fill this area with a stair which follows that wall, and I can also do the same with the other one by selecting the boundaries on the left-hand side and just extending my stairs views to the boundaries of the given space. So same stair, same structure, same situation, two different approaches solved by the combination of the baseline and the boundaries. Where is it? Ah, this one, yes. So the same situation over here. Yeah, probably what I should do is to do this. Sorry guys, whoever have the files downloaded. It's actually not even ignoring, I just didn't redefine the view then. Sorry about that. Let's redefine the view. So what I can do with the boundary line in this situation, how would you approach this? I'm guessing that that's not the best solution if I have a structure like that, to go on the outer skirts of the wall and just follow like that, because that won't really give me the best kind of way that I could edit this stair. So that's why and that is the answer of why would I use the inner edge as a reference line, because in here it does actually make a difference whether it's on the left-hand side or the outside or the inside. Right here, I'm going to use the reference line on the right-hand side, and I'm just using these editing modes. So the arc by 3 points and the winder with equal goings. Come here, do that. Create my stair like this. Once that is placed, I can go over here and, let's zoom out a little bit. I can go over here and select the boundaries of the stair itself. Just make the necessary adjustments. Now, actually, because I have very strict rules within my stair, probably I cannot fix it. So I'm going to make sure that some of these rules are turned off. Now I'm actually going to turn off all of them. And to make sure that I can fill this space, I will go and extend my stair as it is. Very nice. And once that is done, I can actually select the boundary, add a few extra nodes, to each of the places where I have a corner. And once that is done, I can extend them. I know it doesn't look quite well now, but it actually eventually will pay off what I'm doing. And then, as like if we're editing a fill or anything basically within Archicad, these curved segments will be turned straight after I have clicked on those parts. So possibly this is the easiest way I can do this and edit this stair within these boundaries. Let me just put that over there and put that over there. See? This is how you would use the reference line on the inner edge, and this is how you play along with the boundaries and with the reference line altogether. Right now, it might make sense for me even to change the floor plan symbol, and this is when I would make sure that I'm going into edit mode, going into the symbol mode, and then maybe even moving my walking line to the points where it's actually running. It really depends on the actual preference of that display view. Now let's really move on to the practical examples. So what I'm going to do now is edit use a few tools that use all of these that we have run through now and use them in a very combined situation. We'll have 3 practical examples for that: an entrance cabinet, a renovation, which I told you is like a renovation example from the UK that I've done, and design stair for a few other editing tweaks. Let's see what the situation is here now. If you follow me, we're in this view, custom stair entrance cabinet, and I have switched to the 3D view. So what do I have here? A very ugly concrete monolithical stair, which absolutely wouldn't work in this situation. And I have just prepared a few walls because those will be our editing aid to create the entrance cabinet. So if you select the stair, you can go into the stair settings, and since stairs can have favorites, and not only have stair favorites, but even for structures, finishes, even for floor plan displays, you can save floor plan display types, you can save favorites. So on the upper stair level, if you're on the actual you're on the element level, you can select a different kind of favorite. Now, if you're following, select the entrance stair favorite, okay? That is going to be this type of structure. So I have I have 2 beams on the bottom, and otherwise it's a finish that basically goes up. All right, so what can I do in edit mode other than actually just tweak the floor plan settings and change the structures of the elements? I can also edit the sub-elements and the sub-elements geometry. So if you're in edit mode, you can, and for that specific reason, now I'm only turning on the treads. By the way, whenever you right-click on one of these elements in this little palette, that it's going to be the only one that is selected. So if you left-click, each and every one is turning off individually. If you right-click, then that's the one that stays. So I right-click on the thread, and now I'm starting to edit these sub-elements as they are. The reason why it's actually cutting into this wall, because I already applied the solid element operations to that wall. That's the only way. It's not happening automatically. I'm going to change that one as well. And now what I need to do is to follow it with the risers on the 2 stories. So I'm selecting the riser, and for some interesting reason, I don't really know why, but the bottom nodes don't really work for me. So the ones that do are on the top nodes, and with the top nodes, I can actually drag them to the level where I want them to. The bottom nodes didn't work. And once I have stretched these out, you see how they actually follow, and you say how they actually cut into over there. What I still need to do is to create a cabinet from this one thread on the top. Same way as it is with usual like slab or fill or any other editings within Archicad. I can go here, I can add an extra node to that point where I want to extend it, and I can use the offset edge tool to create the top surface of the cabinet there. And since, again, the solid element operation is applied, I can do this little sub-element editing in the edit mode itself. What else I can do, and I'll show you that now. I can, for example, select the stair structure. And just so that you know, I have already done that. But the way you can actually do to split the structure, even in edit mode or even in like in the normal view, is if you click on the stair itself in edit mode, you can right-click and click on this one, split stair structure. And by clicking on that option, there's this little cutting plane appearing, which you can define a cutting edge for you, which can split the structure within that element. And I have already done that, so that's why we have a node right in the middle. So if I select this structure and possibly change it a little bit to not to have this beam look, but a monolithic, and especially from the monolithic, I'm having this box, or I don't really have a nice way to say it at this moment, or the accurate way to say it. But what I can do is to select and possibly override its surfaces with, I don't know, a white color. Let's use paint titanium white. And once I have done that, because it didn't really modify my finishes themselves, just the structure, I have this stair that I have created, and then obviously then over here there might be a GDL object coming, which is a cabinet or which is a shelf or something that you model. Michael Bohr, is preparing with something very exciting for you guys. He just demoed that to me in a few days, and it really is exciting. So you can place a cabinet right in here, and it's basically we did a very custom stair with still having the correct floor plan representation. So the important thing in actually editing the sub-elements, the native sub-elements themselves, that the floor plan display does follow, and you actually have the accurate display in floor plan as well. So that's the main thing that I wanted to say with this one. Any questions to this example? I can't hear anything, sorry. Yeah.
I think when I've tried this in the past with having like tiered seating, three treads that travel around the bottom, I've had issues with getting the structure to kind of
to follow
in the same way that you can easily kind of make the treads do it. The structure, even as a monolithic thing, kind of
the structure, as far as I know, only follows when you edit the boundaries itself. So because you this was only a sub-element level editing. It wasn't actually editing the boundaries of the stairs.
When you edit the boundaries for the structure to follow, it'd follow the treads rather than actually following around that bottom, like the tread that it's on. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I don't know. You would have to draw it first.
Yeah.
Talk about it in the T-break.
Yeah, it's sort of when it comes around here. So if you edit the structure to do that, the structure's still doing this rather than actually.
Oh yeah, I understand around. Because you have edited the boundary, but the.
Yeah, so the trade's been edited around like this one, but if you edit the boundary of the structure, it just still follows that basic.
Only way I could think of solving that is to adding an extra element on the side, because that's a little bit too much for poor stair guy.
Different question.
Yeah.
So if you split the structure, that stair still remains as one element that's recognized.
Yes. 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 It's still one element. You can still move it. It's still associative. It's just the structure type that you basically split, or you split it to have extra structure types. Yes. I think it's, I might be wrong, but I think it's exactly the same as if you would add a node when editing. The only difference between adding a node and not, if it's you have the automatic landing option turned on, whenever you place a node in the reference line, it will like trying to put a landing over there. If you split the structure on the sub-element level, it doesn't. It follows the actual rules of the stair, but you can split the structure and have a different for those.
Is there a way of being able to specify a minimum landing size as a default?
Well, as far as I know, there's the automatic landing type, which is you only have just a minimum. So there's a minimum that you can have. The maximum, I'm not quite sure if you can actually control that. I think the only way to control this is if you have this automatic landing, and then in the landing options, you can only control the, I don't think you can add a maximum for a railing rather than a minimum. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Second example, UK support case. So guy calls and asks me that there's a renovation that they're doing in a building, and they're actually refurbishing the whole thing, and they're recreating this stair with within their boundaries. So yes, it's this is a tough one because it's like it totally fits the area. It's a very special structure type, so it does give you a headache of how you can solve that, but there actually is a solution even here, and that solution gives you that kind of approach, which then eventually in even later cases it can help you to solve certain scenarios. So over here, what my Nathan, do I still have time? 25 minutes, that's perfect. Okay, we can do this in 25 minutes and all the other things as well. Maybe later on the questions will be afterwards in the break so that we follow the order. So how do I approach this situation? The way that we usually did is that now what you see here, that's that's what they sent to us. So it's like a drafted up version of the stair that they're trying to achieve. And what I did is, first of all, to get the outer boundaries of the area where I possibly want to place my stair. So you just use it as drafting that area where it might go. Then selecting all of those lines. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to get it out of context. So what I'm doing, I'm moving all of these lines over here and start working on it like that. Oh, sorry, I forgot something. It's very important because that is possibly what's going to help us the most if we have those points where these actually go. So I'm placing lines even at those places where there should be a stop and where there should be a landing. Okay, that's how it all goes. So once I select all of these and try to move them out, I can start editing the stair itself. And for that, I'm going to use a very simple stair, and I'm also going to use one of the tricks that is possible to do. I think, yeah, we're doing the renovation. Nothing changed, so it's not like a super tweaked stair that I have done. I am only using this favorite because this the width is going to be 750, and I'll tell you why. If I would have this on a meter and I'm trying to edit the stair as it is, so in the actual width that it is using, I wouldn't be able to create the turning types, and the solver would just come up and it would create all of these crazy stairs for me, which wouldn't resemble for the one that I'm actually trying to do. So that's why I'm using a smaller or a shorter width for the stair, so that it can help me to. It can help. I can actually edit it. I'm having the reference sign on the right-hand side, and what I'm doing, I'm using the winder with equal goings right away because it actually starts with a winder. So I'm using that, then continuing to the 7th step, which is right over there where I have marked that point. I'm switching to the landing. I'm adding a segment of a landing over there. Then I'm switching back to the winder with equal goings option and continuing to edit that node and just dragging the stair to this point. Now, this wasn't really a hard task, luckily, and it's actually thanks to the short width of the actual stair that I could do this, because it can freely turn, and it doesn't need to recalculate those lines in the middle, and it's not corrupting the stair itself. So my next task will be just so that I delete these lines first and also the curves. So my next task is to get a hold of this stair, move it back to this area, so I can start, editing and just adjusting the boundaries to the actual field where it should be. So I can select the stair. Of course, I select the boundary. I get rid of these extra nodes that are here because I don't really need them. They are just editing nodes. So on the boundary, those nodes don't really mean anything. If I select the stair, you still see that the nodes are there on the reference line. On the boundary, they're actually just generated because the reference line had those points as well. But on the boundary, it doesn't make any difference whether you have those points or not. So I can just get rid of them. You can keep them on, but it just doesn't make too much sense. And all I'm doing is pushing the stair to the points where it actually should be. And as the next step, I'm filling. And see as the preview is drawing itself. Possibly from this line, I couldn't go further because all of these binders are meeting at one point. So I have to make, I have to agree with some of the with creating just a super tiny stairwell, possibly. When I was trying to create this example, in my memories, I was able to push these together. I'm not sure why I can't at the moment. It might be a stair setting that I'm using, and that I probably spent another 3 hours to figure out the kind of regulations that this stair needs that I have to create. But yeah, but this is a very special case. I mean, usually you don't really create stairs like this. So I know that it seems like an awful lot of work, but it actually is just a very special scenario, which still we were able to solve, but with like a special mindset and a special approach. But anyway, this pretty much looks like what I wanted to create at the beginning. And here it might come a little bit handy to edit the symbol, because the way that they have created this stair wasn't actually like this. It was something, the walking line should run something like that. I'm not sure, this is like not super accurate now, but something like that. So yeah, possibly something like this. That's all that I could do for them in this case, but it actually looks kind of okay compared to the situation, the difficulty of the situation. So use drafting lines because they can help your work very much. Use the extra nodes for sure, because just by editing those segment types and editing those terpene types individually can highly make the process a little bit more effective. And if you need to adjust a little bit or tweak the symbols, you're free to do that in the edit mode. The next and the last example that I want to show you from the stairs is, for example, in case we want to have a very custom stair that we want to edit. And over here, it's actually just, I'm just going to quickly explain how you can do that. I'm going to edit mode again, and of course in edit mode you can select the individual sub-elements, right? So what else can I do with these sub-elements? Actually on the sub-element level, the convert selection to morph command still works. So I can select the thread if it's that customizable that it's not only the horizontal, plane where I want to modify its boundaries, because that's the only thing that within a stair element you can do while it still remains a native thread. How you can actually edit its entire geometry and make it lower or higher or add an absolutely completely custom structure is to convert it to a morph that won't become part of the stair. So now instead of the actual thread, you'll have a morph. But if you come out of the stair editing mode, you have why did that happen? I think let's go into edit mode again. Sorry, my mistake. Oh, it actually didn't happen. Edit, select, right click, convert selection to morph. Okay, exit edit mode. And then I can start playing with it. Was it because my 3D elevation, I think it just somehow took the schematic mode, but anyway, you do understand what's really happening. So for example, if I set this building material to a precast, and I'm just getting this override down, then I can start to, let's say, do whatever I want with this stair thread. So I can do this. I can even modify its height, whatever. And then, of course, as with any other element that you model in Archicad with the Morph tool or any other building element, you can go and libraries and objects save selection as stair tread. So you can save a custom tread and then go back into the actual stair settings, go into edit mode, select the tread, and instead of using the built-in tread, you start using your custom objects. Now, for the sake of this example, we have a number of properly edited custom threads already available. So if you want to join the exercise, the only real thing that we need to do is to use the prepared custom threads that, of course, with some after editing and with matching the heights up, those were the ones that we were able to create. You go into edit mode, select the first thread, and from the built-in thread options, choose the 1, So this is a thread that we have created this way. So right-click, convert to Morph, then, edit the lines, and then further on. So I'm just repeating this now to create that particular stair. 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5. Just make sure to select the Morph rather than the, or the thread rather than the, where was I? 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6. 7, and 8. So this looks quite fancy. It looks quite okay, so I can work with that. And actually, this is possible to be used even on the upper deck. So if I wanted to do the same, of course, it doesn't change all of the stair instances that are like, edited the same way. But what I could do, I could copy just this up on other stories and use it all over the plan. There's just one, let's say, con for this kind of solution, that when you edit the actual native thread, it is reflected in the floor plan display. If you're using custom threads, custom objects, it is not. So it actually keeps the same kind of floor plan display that it had before. So I can imagine that this afterwards needs some editing, but it's really not that difficult if, for example, you would need to create a shop drawing, unfortunately, for it anyway. I know that it's one of the cons to this approach, but definitely it's a highly customizable stair, and still it stays associative. You can still place railings on it, etc. So that's why you would use this method. Just to talk a little bit about railings too. If you go on the railing basics folder, I have there, let's say, placed or prepared a number of different types of railings that you could create with the railing tool. Some come out of the box, of course, so these I'm sure that you know from the default template. The difference between all of this are that the railing sub-elements, they use very differently. So over here, how did I create, for example, this gate, or that's not the right word, this is what is it? Help me. I think it's a fence. Thank you very much. Yes, it is a fence. So I created this fence that way that that it uses a very high segment. What is a segment in a railing? The segment is basically describes the repetitive pattern, the height of the repetitive pattern within that railing. If it's a residential building or if it's a public building and you have the regulations that the railing top has to touch at least 1.1 meter, then obviously the segment type will be 1.1. If you want to create a fence, not counting the top of the posts themselves, then you have a 2 meter, 1.8 or 2.2 meters, depending on the actual things. What the segment settings actually affect over here is the height of the top rail. So that top rail always goes on top of the segment. And what else it does, here's where you have access to the reference line and whether that is offset or not. And here is where you have access to tilting the railing horizontally or vertically in that case. And there is one other very important option, the pattern distribution and position, which is settable by segment. So over here I have three options. First is pattern distribution, divide segment, fixed length, equally distribute. This one, that will give you a divide segments into divisions. What that does actually control the number of inner posts that are created within one segment. And because a segment from, if we're thinking about the vertical elements, segments boundaries are posts on each, the beginning and the end of a segment. Inner posts are distributed within these posts within the length of the actual segment, and then balusters and panels are distributed within the distances of the inner posts to each other. So that's the logic how a railing works. And over here, what you see is how the inner posts are basically distributed within that one segment. So this can be a number of divisions, or it can be a fixed pattern length, or it can actually be equally distributed patterns. So the pattern itself follows, like in the curtain wall, we have very similar settings up until a level where it can still follow this 1.5 meters, it will, and the end is the leftover. What we don't really use that often is the railings on associated stairs. So set pattern length to number of treads. What does that mean? That this pattern, this distribution pattern where a post or an inner post should be placed, an inner post, sorry, that would be defined. So the length of this pattern would be defined by the length of the actual tread that you have placed the railing on it associatively. So that's how you can create those situations where you only want like 3 railing posts up on a stair. That's when you can, that's how you can edit it to stay associatively and to use it on multiple stairs which has different like goings, different lengths of goings. When I'm using this option, I'm not using this option now because sometimes it's just, you're not using that different, so the stair settings are not that different all over the plan so that this actually makes sense. It's rather easier to use the fixed pattern length and set the pattern length to that value, which is the going of the actual stair. And you see now, if I use this option, this is grayed out. Why is that grayed out? Because I can define that in the inner post settings. So how far the inner posts should be from each other, that defines a pattern length, and every pattern is distributed within the inner posts, and then the inner post patterns are distributed within the segment. That's the logic how this works. I won't really go into each and every railing now, but just so you know, for example, for this fence, what I did, I have the inner posts as these newel posts. I have the same settings for the posts that I have for the inner posts, so obviously it follows the same kind of look everywhere. And what the only trick that I use to create this kind of look, so this that I have here, see, because it's using that, is that the balusters are where's that setting? Sorry, baluster component settings. Yeah, that's it. So these are thin and long balusters, so basically behaving like, again, I don't know the English word for that. Sorry? Thank you. Okay. Yes, exactly. So that's what they behave at. And the only thing that I, again, used is a rotation for them so that they are overlaid on top of each other. That's, for example, one approach for a railing. Second one, of course, we have to make a little bit of, we have to be aware of what the difference is between the different kind of rail types. So there are a number of rail types, sorry. There are a number of rail types which can be described best in this option. So we have the rail, which can locate itself anywhere within the segment itself. We have a handrail, which usually is used to have, you know, a different, not necessarily part of the actual pattern, but as an additional element to follow regulations. And the top rail is just the one that actually closes the entire segment from the top. So that's how the logic works. Inner posts are these, again, that define the pattern itself, and balusters are the ones that come in between. Here, the rail stops the balusters as they are. Now, what would happen if I delete that bottom rail, and I have my balusters over there, and I am trying to place an extra rail that I want to put here. Now this actually did cut my balusters in half, so the only thing that I need to do and how this was all created is that the balusters that I have cut in half, I'm deleting the ones on the bottom, and then this is left empty and the top ones are there. So that's how these are usually created. If I want to do the same thing, so I want let's say a place where I have balusters and where I have panels as well. The thing that I do is I go on the inner posts and I have, for example, I place a second inner post in this view. So I have 1, 2. So that's my pattern. I have 2 inner posts within one pattern. And then by selecting the panel and pressing on the little plus button in the scheme editor, I put a panel over there. So now I have, on one side I have balusters and on the other side I have panels. It's a very simple editing process. What I have in the back here is the one that we're actually going to use in the next example. So just if you go into the settings, or if I show you myself, the segment itself is 1 meter high, because now that's just the general setting that I'm using. Now it's the pattern distribution and position is using the fixed pattern length, so the 3, 4, 5. And actually, I think I need to edit that and make it 350, so that the inner posts are distributed 350 millimeters from each other. Once I have adjusted that, let's just use the settings of this railing and go over to the custom railings first option, design 3D. Now, how does this work, and how can I make this type of railing work on this type of stair? As you know, railings can be associative. Unfortunately, sometimes you need to exit the view and then go back in for the railing to find the actual stairs point, which, especially in those files which are demo files from 21. Sorry? Excuse me? Oh yes, thanks very much. Then that's the only reason. Sometimes it does not really work. Okay, thanks, Barbara. Yeah, so that's what I do. I'm creating an associative railing on this stair. All that I have to do is to follow the stairs point and then find the top node of the stair. I'm often see that happening as well, that because railings can be associative to basically anything, you often use that point, but afterwards you're not continuing with the railing, with the stair itself. You're often making it associative to the slab. So just make sure to finish it up at the stair itself and not the slab. So what happened now, and what it's actually doing, see, because I have edited that kind of length, it's actually trying to place each and every rail on the stair, but it's not that accurate yet. It's almost slipping off. So what you can still do in a railing setting, you can go over here, and this is when the nodes make sense. So this is when you can actually edit the node settings. In the node settings, you have a number of options of how you can handle the pattern distribution within your stair. And basically what you need to do to distribute equally that 3 railing posts on each and every tread is to use the little offset to make it not start from the beginning, but maybe a little bit after, so that it's distributed equally. So it's not always that difficult to solve a situation like that. Just use a little bit of an offset for the node. Once I do that, see, it's because I have that little offset at the beginning, it's distributed equally on each and every step the same way. And for example, if I have a situation like that, what should I do? I'm modifying the stair, or the railing, sorry, the rail segment height, not to 1 meter, but instead to 10. They go right up, so you don't need to place many railings as they are. And what I'm using here is probably a solid lamp operation with the top slab, so that everything works correctly. So let's just do that now. Where's connect? Yes. Yes, it did happen. Good. So this is basically the first example that I wanted to show you, and the second is going to be a little bit different. The second is going to be a renovation case, which is that stair that we have just created for the in the UK for the renovation purposes. So how can I approach this one? Probably I don't really need a railing on the outside now, so I could place a hand railing, but that's not my objective now. What I want to do is to create like a column that fixes, and I know, see, this is the stringer thing that you were talking about, so I completely agree. Sometimes it just goes absolutely crazy. Honestly, I have turned off the structure too many times in these cases because it's just easier sometimes to model it manually when it's that twisted rather than just go with the one that the stair maker gives us. But luckily, I have created a starting view so that you don't see the the screwed up beam at the beginning. So what I'm actually doing here, I'm trying to place a railing and like that kind of, yeah, so 5 minutes? Okay, sure. What I'm actually creating now is I'm trying to place that railing on top of this stair. And for that, I'm using a very simple favorite, which is this one, so the timber balustrade. Again, there's no special settings. The only thing that is set here is that it has an equal distribution. The inner posts, there are no inner posts, there are just 2 posts at the end, and then the balusters, if there are no inner posts, they are distributed within the entire segment. So the segment is basically the pattern as well. For the posts, I have a newel post that I have set, and for the balusters, I have absolutely equal distribution. So what is my setting here? Because that is possible, I am now creating the railing from the top to the bottom. So I'm trying to place it somewhere, possibly here on this node itself. So see how it's, again, almost working the way that I want to, but of course, this is not what we would go with when we're making this documentation. But luckily, because of the edit mode of the railing, we can also use and tweak the settings a little bit so that it matches what we are trying to achieve. So first I'm going into edit mode, selecting this first post, and I'm trying to edit and make this a column, right? So I can go into the post settings. I can make the first of all, I have to adjust just a few things in the post settings. So over here, you will see that it works very similarly to how the new column and beam tool work. Actually, that I think was more or less like modeled over after this new post settings. So you define whether something has a fixed setting and whether something is stretchable. That's entirely what this setting is all about. So now I'm probably using, since I'm only trying to modify the bottom part and not the top, I'm using a fixed one for the middle, which is actually related to the stair, and then the bottom will be stretchable. So the only difference that I have made is that I made this static part modifiable, and there's one other thing. You can define whether the bottom follows, it follows parallel to the slope, or it's actually a horizontal ending. So instead of this slope, I'm getting a horizontal end. So let's click on that, and still in edit mode, I can grab and hold of that node and start pulling it down to actually match the level of the flooring, so it behaves as a structural column for my stair that I'm creating. And once I exit edit mode, it works perfectly. What I still need to adjust is this situation over here, because that's not really what I'm after. So first of all, I'm placing the reference line a little bit off, so I have the railing on the stair itself, and still that post is not quite what I'm trying to do. So I again go into edit mode, select that post, and just get rid of it. So it's that simple. What often doesn't really come intuitively again, and I completely understand, is that if you hover around with the shift, see that little arrow appearing? That's actually a node. that is the railing end that you can place up until the end of the railing. That usually is, by default, it's settable in the entire railing segment settings. But once that is not turned on, the only way to turn it, if it's not turned on, the only way to turn it on after editing the stair, or not just turn it on for the entire stair, but for just one part, so the upper part, is this little node. So once you have pressed over there, this one, yes, you can have access to the handrail end selection settings. And right here, I'm going to just create one very simple end. So I'm editing. It will have, this is the rotation distance. Basically, that's going to be 50. For that, I'm going to use a 50 extension as well. Or maybe I don't need that, but I don't know yet, so I'm using it. And over here, I'm also using a 50. And just this little guy defines whether it actually creates a little sloping before actually making the turning type. So for that, I'm also adding a 50 millimeters just to make it look nice. And see how I created that ending, and I also added that 50 millimeters after the curve, which I don't need now, so I can either move it manually, so to adjust it to be 0, but it also reflects in the settings themselves. So this 50 has reset itself to 0 within the edit mode settings. All right, so now we have finished the railing. It looks relatively, accurate, because still I have these posts close to the end. So again, what I can do, I can go into edit mode, and just to make sure that that doesn't happen with the node settings, I'm again adding probably a -50 to make it work, or not, if it will let me to do it. Either way, I don't know. Let's do it this way. Let's go into edit mode then. I might have modified too much so that the stair is not capable of handling this situation. Let's have it here, or let's have it in the baluster settings, I'm not sure. Let's do it someplace here. Let's do it there. Let's have 50 there. That's actually not really going to help, but whatever. No, that's really not what I wanted to do. Yeah, but if I reset the custom nodes, unfortunately, because I have deleted that post, if I would have done, actually, this is where the stair tool comes, the railing tool comes very interesting, is if I had probably done this before actually deleting the post, then I would be able to set this, but afterwards I don't, so you get it. But the point is, you have a way of achieving what you want, and that's what I wanted to show you today. So, just to wrap it up, because I don't think I have any time left, I have a number of things here as tips and tricks set, and actually, so you can go through them just in case, just to explain how the railing works. Also, there is an additional thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is to create custom railing posts and then adding custom symbols to those custom railing posts, especially if you're using the railing not just to create actual rails within the building, but to use it for a number of things and assembly elements. So like distributing a curve around a slab that you're using on your terrain, or etc. You probably want to use these custom settings. I'm really happy to talk about that later, and I can show you how to do that. But otherwise, thank you, and if you have any questions, please send them now. Anything? Or later?
Can you say handrail and
Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah. I did that once. I actually created a whole accessible railing component so that each and every, it's easier to save it as individual, sub-element favorites, because you can just apply it whenever you create the custom railing. But yeah. So that could be saved as a favorite as well.
The floor plan display, especially when the stair is in a module, plays up to no end. So
Plays up to what? Sorry.
it plays up.
In other words, it doesn't lock it.
Okay. I didn't know that expression. Sorry.
So what we've found is
Uh-huh.
there for a stair.
Let's go here. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so if you go into the property of it.
That you mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here you have a list layout on, and they only list two items there. Now, depending on where that stair sits in the cutting plane range, that list changes. So when you're setting up a stair to go into a module, what you need is to be presented with all of those options.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way to do it really without adjusting the position of the stair, getting all the settings right, and then for every possibility, and then putting it into your model. It's a real problem because we use house types
Mhm.
on a master plan.
Mm-hmm.
It just plays up, and the only way we could fix that was to shift it up and down or increase the cutting plane range, get all of the settings in there for that floor plan setting, and then place it in.
Yeah, because with the old StairMaker, there was like a static look for each and every, and with this one, it always picks up the one from the host file, and rather than the one that in the hotlink. Yeah.
Is there a way to just override that completely?
I think once we came up with some kind of workaround for that, but it definitely doesn't come to you as. I'll think about it. I think I can remember at this spot. I couldn't, but I think I can remember by the end of the day of how we actually did it somehow.
My workflow is just morph it.
Don't morph it. No,
That's
don't
my
morph it.
next T-shirt, by the way. But
Morph it.
thank you very much for making the way all the way over from Hungary. It's a very long
problem.
trip to come down here. I greatly appreciate the 2 sessions you put on. I hope that everyone in the audience has enjoyed it as well. You could have talked about stairs and railings all day. It's a very complex tool. It's something that I'm hoping that people here today have gained a bit more of an insight about. But the other positive is actually on the Graphisoft YouTube channel, there is literally hundreds of videos on these tools. So I do encourage you to access those resources that are freely available as well to learn a bit more. But thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you very much. Also, look on Help Center because there are very good articles on how to use it in alternative situations. Like, for example, how you can use a stair to create a railing. But not railing, sorry, like a ramp and stuff like that. So just...
What? There's the Help Center?
Yeah.
There's a reference guide to Archicad? Oh, I've never
Not the
known that.
reference line.
I've never known that for 19 years.
Really?
No, I'm a joke. It's the number one thing is that when you have users in your office and they come to you for help and they ask you a question about the software and it's actually in the reference guide, but they just don't choose to open it. No more questions. You can talk later.